Okay, so today we're going to talk about 4.7, Causes of the Civil War. The objective for today is students will be able to explain the causes of the Civil War. So here we see the Kansas and Nebraska Act. This was proposed by Stephen Douglas. And essentially how it started was an issue over moving the railroad westward. So if they were going to move the railroad westward, these territories needed to be states. So the territories needed to be states. Now, this would have ended up repealing the Missouri Compromise. If you remember back, Missouri Compromise said that anything north of 46, anything north of that was a free state. Everything south of that would have been a slave state. Well, Nebraska wasn't a problem, but Kansas was. So this would have repealed the Missouri Compromise because we needed to figure out if Kansas, if they were going to be slave states or free states. And so essentially what Stephen Douglas said was popular sovereignty. He was the one that came up with this. Popular sovereignty is let them vote. Vote on the issue and decide. This ended up leading to a lot of problems that we're going to get into here in a moment. It led us right into bloody Kansas. So this was a result of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Essentially what happened, Kansas became a battleground over slavery. People were traveling to Kansas to fight. To fight for slavery. The John Brown's Pottawatomie Creek was a radical abolitionist. So he was somebody who was against slavery. They ended up killing 5 pro-slavery individuals. However, there was a total of 200 deaths and over $2 million in damages because of what we call bloody Kansas. Because there was this huge concentration of people that were anti-slavery plus people that were for slavery fighting against one another to try to determine whether or not Kansas was going to be a free state or a slave state. The tensions over slavery continued with Dred Scott. Dred Scott was a slave. He was fighting for his freedom. His owner took him to a free state. He lived there for 2 years, and then the owner died. So then the question was, is Dred Scott free or still a slave? So what ended up happening was the Supreme Court, under Justice Roger Taney, ended up saying that Dred Scott, because he was a slave, was not a citizen. So he could not have a case before the Supreme Court. This is a huge ordeal. It caused a lot of controversy, a lot of problems between, the abolitionists and pro-slavery groups. We're coming back to John Brown again. John Brown continued his abolitionist fight. So again, he was an abolitionist, meaning against slavery. Who wanted to lead a slave uprising. So they tried to raid the arsenal. At Harper's Ferry, so it should be. To take weapons and arm the slaves. This did not go well. Eventually, John Brown was caught. He was tried for treason and hung. And this is a stock photograph before he was hung, and you can see right here they've got him kissing a baby. It looks like probably a slave baby if I had to guess, as a recreation of what probably happened on that day. So this led us into the direct cause of the Civil War. The election of 1860. The election of 1860, President Lincoln was elected president. President Lincoln, in prior terms, had said stuff about slavery, but did not promise to end slavery. But people were so afraid. States were afraid he would. So they did what they call secede, or to separate. And if you take a look over here, it gives you a general idea of the election. So if we take a look at the map right here, in the Republican for Lincoln, although he got a lot of the electoral vote, he did not get a ton of the popular vote. If you look at some of the other candidates, it would have been, if they didn't have as many candidates on the other side, it could have been a very, very tight race. So we ended up having multiple states succeeding. There were 7 states that ended up succeeding from the Union: Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and South Carolina and Texas. Yes. Okay. And so this essentially led us right into the Civil War after these states succeeded.